So apparently this guy leaves Square Enix and writes an insanely long tweet about everything he thinks that the company did wrong. This guy's name is Jacob Navik. And honestly, I have never heard of this guy until this came out. Apparently he was a business director in Square Enix and he handled the cloud gaming division. Now, I don't even know if that was one of their like creative divisions, you know, which I think they have 5. Didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even know Square Enix had a cloud gaming division, but apparently they did. And once this cloud gaming division crashed and burned, this guy got laid off and he went to Twitter and he just claimed a bunch of shit. And I'm just going to bring it up with you guys right now to see what he did. This comes from Zeus Arcade. This is a Hispanic, probably news site. And I want to go through every single point that he did and every single claim that he made with you guys, because first of all, I know this is going to sound crazy, but there are some things that he's saying here that I actually agree with. Some of the other things, I don't know, but I think there's more of a gray area here than a lot of people are giving, you know, credit to. But the first thing that I want you guys to learn and understand, or like, the first thing I want you guys to know when we're getting into this is that this guy is butthurt. So a lot of the things that he is writing about here, I don't know, man. First of all, we don't know if these things would actually be good for the company. And second, we just got to take it with a grain of salt because, you know, it's kind of weird. You leave the company and then now you just want to talk shit on it. Not that I'm defending Square, by the way, because if you guys have seen my videos, I'm very mad with a lot of decisions they made recently. Not just recently, but really over the years. But this is something that I just can't keep inside, and I really wanted to talk to you guys about it and see if any of you guys here that are more, you know, inclined to be fans of Square Enix, what you guys think about it. First thing, and of course, this comes off from us, you know, participating in the beta for the new Dissidia Final Fantasy, you know, the only PvP, the PvP only gacha game, that kind of shit. I don't know about that, man, but I think it has a lot to do with what we talked about when we made that video and why I think that game is legitimately just on the rails to failure. The first point here is one that I really wanted to talk about for a long time, where he's saying the company is failing to attack new generations. And yeah, that is true, dude. It's trying, but I guess it's failing. And when it's talking about new generations, it is not just new generations. Square Enix just wants new fans. Now, the new generation of gamers is a part of those new fans that they want. But really what they wanted is just to become more widespread, to get a more general audience of people to, you know, buy their games and play their games. And I think the only game that actually achieved that is, ironically, a game that really stood true to what it always was, which was 14. The amount of people that I've played Final Fantasy 14 with that have been playing that game for a substantial amount of time that never touched another Final Fantasy, to me, is insane. I never thought I would see that happening, but it is what it is. I guess it's the only actual game that Square Enix right now actually was able to achieve this with. But what I want to talk about is that Square Enix has been trying to attract this more broad audience and attract, I guess, the new generation of gamers as early as the late 90s, man. Believe you me, they've just been really trying to come up with as many ways as possible and planning ahead to make the games reach more people. They've been trying to turn Final Fantasy from turn-based into a more action-oriented game ever since they put out Vagrant Story and Parasite Eve. Those games were tests, and then Final Fantasy 12 becomes what it was. Final Fantasy 13 Versus becomes Final Fantasy 15. For over 2 decades, maybe, they've been trying to make Final Fantasy become something that is quote-unquote more accessible to the general public and to new audiences, because they've been really freaking stubborn about thinking that turn-based just would never be able to capture a bigger audience than what it already had. Now, I don't even need to get into why that's probably wrong, but I'll just say Expedition 33. Even Persona 5 back in 2017. But still, this is what they wanted to do, and they were really freaking stubborn about it, and they capped at it to this day. But everything they tried just didn't pan out the way they wanted to. Changing Final Fantasy VII to the remake's action, battle system with like the menus and stuff. I like it personally. I don't think it reached the audience that they wanted. They just said Rebirth didn't sell as much as it did right now. If that's because they were trying to make up for what they lost in Forspoken, I don't know. Same thing happened with Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16, in my opinion, brilliant battle design, brilliant core gameplay mechanic, but I like action. Didn't really reach as many people as they wanted to, apparently. Great game, but didn't hit the mark. So I understand what he's saying here, but it's easy to just say that the company's failing, but I hate the fact that nobody's talking about why. Or in other words, the reason why it's not, like the reason why these things didn't happen, in my opinion, is because instead of trying to get people to understand what turn-based games are like and what is fun about them and what is interesting about them, and creating new fans for these types of games was what needed to happen. We've seen it with other franchises doing that. Other franchises innovating the turn-based. Other franchises capturing the things that the actual turn-based fans wanted and being able to create new turn-based fans. Now, that's just my opinion. Who knows if that would actually have worked, but I think that's what they should have done. And I've been talking about this for a long time. I didn't really care that they changed to action that much because I love action games. So like it's whatever, as long as Final Fantasy still has the same identity, you know, as far as the narrative goes, the characters go, I'd be down to try it. But that's where I think it is, man. When you try, and it's really simple, when you try to cater to everyone and attract everyone, you end up making a game for nobody. And it's really sad. The Venn diagram of people who just liked anything that they were going to put out is really small. Square's biggest mistake is changing to please international audiences, forgetting what international audience loved them for, who they were. That's something that I want to talk in a little bit about too, but I completely agree with that. And it comes from a very, very simple origin, I guess you could call it that, which is that I became a Final Fantasy fan because Final Fantasy was made for an Asian audience. That was their primary audience. And I loved it, and I became a part of that primary audience. The game, the Squaresoft games, at no point had to adhere to my expectations and to what I wanted at the time. They just needed to be themselves. And I became a part of that audience. But now that I'm a part of that audience, what I expect is more of that. Innovative, sure. Different, sure. New, fresh, whatever. They had the talent to do that. But now that I'm a part of that audience, that's kind of the thing that I'm expecting. So it's exactly what you're saying. The fact that they started to shift so hard to be able to accommodate an audience that apparently, from what we've seen, is imaginary, is what fucked it over, you know? Is what it is. So that's the first thing here, right? They've been trying to attract new generations, not recently. This has been something that started happening as early as the late 90s, but just did not work. Every time they tried, it didn't work. Next thing the guy's talking about, he considers their biggest historical mistake was letting another company create the Genshin Impact phenomenon. Now, I've seen a lot of shit happening in Twitter about this, where people are saying, no, that is not the direction we want Square Enix to take their games. Genshin Impact is not what we want Square Enix games to become. And I completely understand that. If you were telling me even now that they were going to quit on their next, mainline entries for Final Fantasy or for Kingdom Hearts, and instead of doing their mainline entries, which is what gave them the fame that they have, they wanted to start making gacha games like Genshin Impact and only that, then yeah, absolutely, that would be a problem. But we need to understand that for as much as people don't want this to happen, the mobile market specifically is something that Square Enix has been focusing on for a long time. And it's something that is supposedly part of their core strategies to reach gamers and make money. So this is the biggest thing I want to talk about with you guys, because this is very, very relevant to what we talk about in this channel. And it's the fact that I agree that they did miss the mark. It indeed was a huge mistake to not be part of the Genshin phenomenon. Now, I do not think Square Enix would have had the creative vision to create what Hoyoverse did. So when he's saying the biggest mistake was letting another company create Genshin Impact, Square Enix wasn't going to do that. And the reason why is because even though mobile games and the mobile audience were a huge part of their core strategy, this is at least what it seemed from an outsider's perspective. They did not really give a shit about their mobile games. All of their mobile games, ever since the beginning, have been very low budget and just given off to third parties to do whatever the fuck they wanted with it. Gumi is one of the worst gacha companies I have ever had the displeasure of playing the games from. And even though a lot of things in those games were cool, like the story, the characters designs, Gumi mismanaged the absolute fuck out of every single Final Fantasy gacha IP they made. All of the Final Fantasy gachas I played, including the new Dissidia, all of them seem like they put in the least possible amount of effort required, the least they could get away with, just so they could make a quick buck with mobile gaming. So the reason why I'm saying this, it's not that I disagree, but with that sort of mentality, which is what it seems like Square had, they would have never, ever, in a million years, thought that this mobile market, which is just a throwaway scene, would ever come to create something on the level of Genshin Impact. That was the mistake. The mistake wasn't, oh, we had to create this. They weren't going to create it. The mistake was not having the vision to acknowledge that. The problem with Square mobile game thinking is that their all ideas are super outdated. They absolutely are. We talked about this in the City of Dwellum. How do you put out a game like the City of Dwellum with the gacha system that it had, with this idea of it being only and only PvP, but in the market, let's say even just if we talk only about games optimized for mobile, you're fucking competing with Chaos Zero Nightmare and Nikkei. That's the thing you're putting out to compete. It feels exactly what you're saying. It feels like they're stuck 10 years ago on the mobile market from 10 years ago. Fucking goddamn it, dude. The City of Dwellum reminds me so much of Final Fantasy Mobius. Remember that one? Mobius? Yeah, it reminds me of that. Anyways, it seems like the top dogs of these AAA developers and all these other video game consulting companies and that kind of shit, they seem like all just a huge LARPer poser fest. Like, all of them don't know what the fuck they're doing there. They don't know what the fuck the video game industry even is. They don't have any idea of what the fans really want. Isn't that what it seems like? So, going on a little bit now, is what I think the biggest mistake that Square Enix did was that whomever was taking care of these mobile fronts, these mobile directions that Square Enix had, whoever was taking care of whatever mobile gaming project they were going to do next, that guy somehow failed to see what Genshin Impact was becoming. Dude, I cannot fathom, and I mean this with the most possible respect towards Square Enix, which is a company that made me happy for a long time in my life. I cannot fathom how they missed to capitalize on what Genshin was doing. The instant, and we're talking like 3 months in, maybe 4 months in, from Genshin Impact coming out, becoming the insane phenomenon that it was, breaking the barrier of gacha games to the mainstream and showing that gacha games aren't just simple mobile games, that they can be these multi-platform behemoths that make you tons of cash per month. The moment, we're talking like month 3 or 4, the moment that you could actually see the amount of monumental success that Genshin Impact was doing, this is the moment whoever was running the mobile part of Square Enix's strategy should have cut everything. They should have quit everything, scrapped everything that they were doing, looked at Genshin Impact and said, holy fuck, we need to do this right now. It doesn't matter, dude. I don't care what, and he talks about bureaucracy later, which is fine. I guess that's something to talk about. I don't care what the fuck was happening, man. How do you fail to see what Hoyoverse was doing and use Square Enix with all this baggage you have? All these... Bro, Square Enix fucking has 5 creative business units. With all of these things that you have, how do you fail to bring to your board of directors that it is imperative that you copy whatever the fuck Hoyoverse is doing, dude? And you have it. My God, dude. The IP's right there. All you've got to do is make a Genshin Impact Dissidia. They could have been the next Wuthering Waves, man. They have so many beloved characters. that you have so many ways to make interesting stories that would be able to fuse those fucking worlds together, right? You could take the Genshin Impact Odyssey type approach, and you go from, you know, Final Fantasy 1 world to Final Fantasy 9 world to Final Fantasy 14 world to Final Fantasy 3 world, just like what Genshin Impact did with its story, or is doing with its story. You could copy the exact same thing, create these beautiful open worlds for people to explore, and put in characters, make them make teams, dude. Dude, that would have been absolutely phenomenal. And I've seen people say too that, oh, Square Enix never had the talent to do that. They never had the people to do that. Really, dude, like, with the way that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the way that Final Fantasy XVI shaped themselves up to be, you're telling me that instead of making whatever the fuck Forspoken was, they couldn't have just rerouted every single developer from those things to do something like that, dude? You know, it is insane to me. So, just to finish up the idea, I don't think they would have ever created the phenomenon, but the biggest miss of their fucking lives is not capitalizing on it with whatever you had. That's the problem. How will they notice Genshin if they're too busy with doing NFT fucking games for the sake of, damn Square Enix NFT. Absolutely, man. Like, how do you think, unironically, that this NFT bullshit is what you should capitalize on instead of whatever the fuck Hoyoverse was doing, man? Because everybody loved Genshin Impact when it came out. No denying that, chat. Everybody loved Genshin Impact when it came out. How the fuck do you not see that? How can you be so blind to your audience, to what the mobile gaming market is at the time, that you can't see that? It is insane. I cannot fathom this to this day. I guess everybody's right to say that today they don't have the talent. Today they don't have the people to do it because they lost so much fucking money. Yeah, they don't. Well, now we're fucked, aren't we? Yeah, I guess it's just looking, Captain fucking hindsight and whatever. They don't have to do all that. Just reboot Opera Omnet, actually listen to their fan base, stop giving us characters we don't even care about. No, on top of that, it's what I said before, G2. I agree, man. It is the insane mismanagement that they already had with the gacha games that they did have. Yeah, so on top of not capitalizing on the one thing they did, the gacha games that they did have, they treated like shit. They treated the players like shit. They treated their core gameplay loop like shit. So that's what happens. So yeah, that's my take on that. And I don't think we'll ever see it. I don't think we'll ever see a game like the one that I'm envisioning, that I'm talking about here. But man, wouldn't it have been cool? Yeah, wouldn't I have fucking sold my goddamn kidney to have a C6 Tifa? You know, I think if they had made a game like that, like imagine if we had a Final Fantasy Dissidia gacha game that played and looked like Wuthering Waves. Imagine that. I don't think I would have quit that game for anything. Even if it wasn't a 50-50, it was like a 25-75. They could get away with so much bullshit just because they're Final Fantasy. Hey, but at least put out a quality game. He calls for creating modern free-to-play games are the ongoing future in bold collaborations. He even suggests mixing Final Fantasy with K-pop. I got something to say here. Like, I get what he's saying, creating modern free-to-play games and ongoing features, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. He's just butthurt about, well, not butthurt, but he's talking about whatever the fuck is happening right now. Like, Star Rail collabing with Fate Stay Night, and like Wuthering Waves collabing with Cyberpunk, which are both animes. And it's something that also Final Fantasy XIV is doing, which they're collabing with Evangelion. I don't know about K-pop, though. Like, I understand there is sort of a Venn diagram, and it is funny because I'm the Venn diagram. You guys know me, I'm a huge K-pop fan, but I don't know if the Venn diagram that I'm a part of being a K-pop fan and a Final Fantasy fan is that big that mixing Final Fantasy with K-pop would be good. Now, let me remind you guys of something. This is something. Let me remind you guys of this. In Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, dude, we had a collaboration with Ariana Grande, man. So it's an honor for my pixel art character and for my music to be included in the new game, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. The mainstay in Japanese pop culture, which I absolutely adore. Ariana Grande, dude. This is her character. That was her character in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, dude. And guess what? We also got a summer version. Brother, You already tried this shit. What the fuck are you talking about? You already tried this. You put fucking Ariana Grande in your gacha, man. I don't think that's what's the problem. Now, I'm not saying that a K-pop event would be an absolute disaster. I'm just saying that's probably not the priority, dude. I think there are so many things we gotta get right before we even think of this that it's insane. It's insane. We also got Katy Perry, by the way. Same game. And if we're talking K-pop, we didn't get K-pop, but we got J-pop in Final Fantasy X too, right? Kodakumi made the songs for the game. The main songs, someone would say, and then she sang them, and it was pretty cool. I actually liked it. But I don't think people went nuts about having Kodakumi in the game. At least not the Western audience. Japanese audience probably did. Now, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate, it's not to say that it can't be done, right? Epic 7 did a collaboration with aespa, but here's the deal, man. Epic 7 is a Korean game. So the Korean audience for Epic 7 is pretty big, and the Venn diagram between people that like Epic 7 and like aespa is much, much bigger than the Venn diagram, in my opinion, than the Venn diagram that Final Fantasy would have with K-pop. So I pulled the absolute fuck out of these units when they came out, but that's because I'm a K-pop stan. And I don't think the Venn diagram is that big. So I guess he's just spitballing here, but it is what it is. Yoshi P, RPG is not the future of Square. I'm glad Expedition 33 won Game of the Year. Did he actually say that? The thing about Yoshi P is, sure, he made Final Fantasy 16, but I don't think he had a choice. Now, he's never going to admit, because he doesn't want to throw the company under the bus, but he's never going to admit that he didn't have a choice. But I don't think he had a choice. Square has had this direction of leaving turn-based and doing that for a long while. So it is what it is. I'm 26 and I don't care about Final Fantasy. I'm seriously wonder if old versus young gamers thing. I bet people younger than me don't even care anymore. Final Fantasy didn't manage to stay attractive like Pokemon. Yes, and I think I can tell you why. It's because when I was a kid, we had one Final Fantasy per year. So we had a Final Fantasy. The first one I ever played was Final Fantasy IV. It came out as Final Fantasy II in America. And I played that when I was 7. And then on the same year, Final Fantasy VII came out in Japan. So I played that. I played Final Fantasy VI after that when I was about 10. So I played Final Fantasy VI way later. And then in 2001, when I actually got a PlayStation, I had Final Fantasy VII to play. I had Final Fantasy VIII to play. I had Final Fantasy IX to play. And then on the next year, I had Final Fantasy X to play. So do you see what I'm getting at? We had so many Final Fantasy games coming out. And at least to me and to a lot of fans of the series, those games were one better than the other. They always managed to make something new and something interesting for the fans. And that's why there are so many diehard friends today, because we had so many different and new experiences with Final Fantasy in sequence during that time. Then Final Fantasy XII came out in 2004, and then Final Fantasy XIII in 2006. Now, here's the deal. From 2004 to 2006, we had only one Final Fantasy, 2013. Now, think with me. Like, if you were born in the early 2000s until today, with 2026, so let's say, like you're saying, people who are like 26, the only Final Fantasy games that came out during your lifetime were Final Fantasy 13 and 15. Besides 16, right? 16 is the newest one. But think about it. From in the 90s, like late 80s to early 2000s, from like late 80s to like 2001, 2002, we had 11 games. And then from the early 2000s to 2026, we have 2. 3 if you count 14. What you play when you're young is what's going to create that fandom, you know, that love for a franchise. And Yoshi P actually talked about that, and I completely agree. The problem wasn't trying to change from turn-based to battle, you know, to active battle systems. It wasn't trying to reach a wider audience by changing their stories up or whatever the fuck they're thinking. The problem is just they couldn't make games. And the games that they did put out, like 13 and 15, just didn't hit the mark for a lot of people. I understand there's a lot of people who love those games. I really do. But a lot of people were not happy. And it just is what it is. It was the FIFA and Call of Duty, their generation. Yes, kind of like that, right? And there was a big difference in what you would like from what a game was putting out. So Call of Duty and FIFA and Halo were kind of what people like the most of the people played, and Final Fantasy was for the different guys. I'm just saying, it was kind of a different thing, but a lot of people found that niche and loved that niche and stayed in that niche. And what Square wanted to be was to popularize Final Fantasy in a way that it became the Halo, it became the Call of Duty, it became this popular thing that everybody played no matter what. And let's be real, man, it was never going to be that. Just from what Final Fantasy fundamentally is as a high fantasy narrative, it's never going to be a fucking shooter on the same place of a game where it's just like go in, shoot people, you know? Nothing against Halo, nothing against Call of Duty, but it's just, I don't know, dude. I think my 16-year-old self could have told this to Square Enix. Let's keep going. He blames stagnation on bureaucracy, so they're used to being so slow, they can't imagine what it is to act fast. Now, this is a big problem, and I think this is pretty spot on. And I think all of the things that I talked about, you know, the fact that they couldn't capitalize on what Genshin Impact was and they couldn't just change their direction to just do this, the fact that they are chasing trends that are dead, you know, the fact that they're fucking gacha games, like what Cream said, is they seem like they're stuck 10 years in the past, and in the way that they act, in the way that they play, in the way that their monetization system is, it is because of some insane bureaucracy. Absolutely. And it's just really sad. Square is the Asian Ubisoft. Now, let me expound on that to finish the video. It has been for a good while, but Square Enix has been taking some really, really hard choices here. It's been taking some really hard actions to take. It's been making hard choices of, you know, and listen, man, I don't mean this in a bad way. I don't think it's good when people lose their job. But the fact that they're cutting off so much support from Western developers and so many of these people that are just working for things that don't seem to be Square's strengths, you know, these side projects and these other things that are probably just never going to work out. The fact that they are finally taking action on these hard decisions, and actually it seems like they are starting to focus again on their Japanese audience and on making games in the way that they used to. I don't know. It gives me a lot of hopium. So I understand this isn't, you know, something to celebrate necessarily, because it's a difficult topic. But it seems like a sacrifice that is for the betterment of the company. And it feels like a light at the end of the tunnel on just maybe we're going to go back a little bit to what we used to be. So when you say Square is the Asian Ubisoft, I think you're kind of right. But at least they're showing some signs of trying to not be that anymore. But who knows, right? Guys, ramblings of a madman about a company that he's loved. About about franchises that he's given his all to, right? He's played everything that he could. I absolutely love Final Fantasy. And I love Square Enix. Well, I'll say Squaresoft, you know, if we're going to be boomers about it. And I legitimately think, or I legitimately want them to be better. And I want them to be, not necessarily to be what they used to be, but show that they can be what they used to be while still making something new and fresh, the way that they always were able to. I don't know. I hope that made sense. I don't know. Anyways, please let me know down in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube what you think. If you think I'm wrong, if you think K-pop actually is going to be really good for the game or whatever, or what should happen with Square in the future, man. What do you think their actions are going to be? And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Please give me a like and sub, or catch me in the lives that we have in the channel, and just come talk to me, man. Come discuss these things and be mad at these choices people have made for in pro of audiences they don't have, that don't exist, they're imaginary. But anyways, thank you so much. It's been your boy Ktsu.